Arnett Land, clear for takeoff.
More than 1,800 times a day, a plane takes off or lands at DFW International Airport. That's almost 680,000 operations a year, making it the fourth busiest airport in the world. It's also a thriving symbol of what happens when two opposing forces finally decide it's better to stop fighting and start working together. DFW Airport is now 40 years old and poised to become the gateway to the Western Hemisphere.
I think it's a tremendous economic engine for the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
It made everybody happy, and it's been the largest economic boost to our entire region.
We have a gem here that has given the Dallas-Fort Worth area the capability to compete on a global stage.
In 40 years, you could see 100 million customers traveling through this airport. There's going to be some winners on these global super hubs, and there's going to be some losers. Our focus is to make sure we're the winner.
The Dallas Morning News and NBC5 present DFW International Airport, flying high at 40.
Flying pancake?
It's Flying Pancake. That's what its nickname was.
Bruce Bleakley is an aviation historian. He runs the Frontiers of Flight Museum in Dallas. It houses everything from this experimental aircraft called the Flying Pancake to the Apollo 7 space capsule. Bleakley says as far back as the late 1800s, Dallas and Fort Worth were hot competitors for transportation.
The competition for air commerce between Dallas and Fort Worth actually goes back even before the turn of the 20th century. This competition for transportation began between the two cities actually with railroads in the 1870s, 1880s to who was going to have the biggest and best railhead. And I think Fort Worth won that battle. And that's the genesis of the Fort Worth stockyards.
When the government begins delivering mail by air, both Dallas and Fort Worth scramble to be the southern terminus. This time, Dallas wins. By the 1930s, commercial air traffic begins at both Love Field in Dallas and at Meacham Field in Fort Worth. After World War II, Fort Worth plows ahead with plans to convert a former military flight training facility called Midway Field into a new regional airport.
A significant event in Fort Worth's aviation history. Formal groundbreaking for the giant new international airport between Fort Worth and Dallas was taken to the living rooms of thousands of homes through the medium of the Texas News. The TV audience saw publisher Amon Carter and other civic leaders turn the first dirt for one of the nation's largest airports.
The Greater Southwest International Terminal was really a wonderful piece of architecture. If you look at the photographs of both from the exterior and the interior, it really looked beautiful. It had some fabulous three-dimensional murals on the walls, and they even had a collection of Western art in one of the conference rooms upstairs. Some original, I think, original Remingtons included, and some other things.
It's hard to visualize, but this pasture used to be Greater Southwest International Airport, formerly known as Amon Carter Field, named after the publisher of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. The terminal was built facing Fort Worth. In fact, the entire airport was in Tarrant County, not Dallas County. You see, Amon Carter didn't like Dallas very much.
Everybody knows the Amon Carter story, that if he went to Dallas, he would take a sack lunch because he'd be darned if he was ever going to spend a dime in Dallas.
Amon Carter faced everything to the west because Fort Worth was where the West began. That was the slogan, remember, on the Star-Telegram.
Was that kind of also take this Dallas?
No, I don't think so. That was a sense of civic pride.
Competition is hot for passengers. Commercial air service begins at Greater Southwest in 1953. But more than 60% of the passengers come from the Dallas area, not Fort Worth. They prefer to hop a plane at Love Field in Dallas. And Dallas civic leaders are caustic at times when comparing Amon Carter's Greater Southwest with Love Field.
We have the most convenient airport anywhere in the country. Its facilities so far outstrip his pet over there in the cow pasture.
In the 1950s and 60s, both airports operate in tandem because the two cities can't agree on a single airport. And flying out of Dallas, for example, is a bit strange.
I was going to go interview with the Civil Aeronautics Board in Washington. We took off from Love Field, took off in a Braniff 707, and immediately started down. And I thought, oh my God, I'm on my first big airplane ride and I'm going to die. We left Love Field, we landed at Greater Southwest. This was in the 60s. And at that time, the CAB required certain flights to touch both airports, which made no sense because the cities couldn't agree, you know, on when to have coffee breaks.
By 1964, the Civil Aeronautics Board puts both Dallas and Fort Worth in a vice. It forces the two cities to sit down and negotiate a regional airport.
The government was going to cut off money, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, they said it's foolish for us to be supporting two airports in a region, you know, that's 30 miles apart.
The Civil Aeronautics Board said, no, we are still not going to designate either of your municipal airports as the regional airport, but you need to figure that out amongst yourselves, and we're going to give you 180 days to do it, or we'll do it for you.
Dallas and Fort Worth are finally forced to fly into the future by working together. What they agree on will make history and a lot of money.
I think it's a tremendous economic engine for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I don't know that the people who were kind of forced into agreeing to do Dallas-Fort Worth realize that.
In planning for a new regional airport, Dallas Mayor J. Eric Johnson and J. Lee Johnson of the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce become known simply as Johnson & Johnson. They spearhead a six-man team of leaders from both cities in hammering out an agreement. They come up with a plan based on passenger traffic. For every 11 passengers flying out of the two cities, 7 come from Dallas. So Dallas gets 7 seats on an 11-member airport board, and Fort Worth gets 4, and Dallas shoulders 7/11ths of the cost of the real estate.
Was DFW Airport the first thing that the two cities really substantially agreed on?
Probably was. It was the first really big project that they had worked on and agreed on.
I can't think of an agreement that was more instrumental, more groundbreaking than the airport.
It made everybody happy, and it's been the largest economic boost to our entire region ever since.
This site is extremely well chosen and would be hard to improve upon.
In December of 1968, ground is finally broken for the start of DFW Airport. It's to be built on 17,000 acres of land in 4 cities. It will be 10 times the size of Greater Southwest, where ridership continues to decline. The once proud showcase of Fort Worth closes in 1974, and by the 1980s, it's a broken, crumbling reminder of what happens when two cities only 17 miles from its front doors fail to work together. In late 1973, some 50,000 people turn out for the dedication of DFW Regional Airport, later renamed DFW International Airport. British Airways flies in the supersonic Concorde for the event, and former Texas Governor John Conley predicts the airport will be a passport to prosperity.
100 years ago, as you well recall, cities prospered or cities perished, depending on where the railroads went. Today we live in a new era, in a new age. And indeed, regions will prosper, nations will do well, cities will live or die on whether or not they have the opportunity to participate in great airport facilities in this jet age.
Shortly after midnight on January 13, 1974, American Airlines Flight 341 becomes the first passenger plane to arrive at DFW Airport. Dr. and Mrs. James Parker of Fort Worth are the first passengers to step off the plane. Also on that flight are the first complainers at the airport. A couple on their honeymoon arrives, but their luggage does not.
We thought we were on a honeymoon trying to go to Las Vegas, but we can't find our luggage, so we got married about 3 hours ago.
Lost luggage amid celebration marks the start of a new era in North Texas. Clearly, DFW is no cookie-cutter airport. But first, size matters. Stay with us. DFW was the first major airport designed specifically to accommodate jets. With more than 17,000 acres of real estate, it is the second largest airport in the U.S. Only Denver, which opens 21 years later with 34,000 acres, is larger. The sheer size of DFW becomes the genesis for early ads sponsored by the North Texas Commission, the promotional arm for the airport. The Commission's ad agency even creates a new word.
There were a group of advertising executives that were in a room, and they were trying to decide, how do you describe a complex metropolitan area, and they came up with Metroplex.
Among those on the creative team at Tracy Locke Advertising was a young account executive named Mike Rawlings.
The proudest moment is when you came up with that ad that showed in a graphic form the map of the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and then the island of Manhattan within Dallas-Fort Worth, and we said, we've got an airport bigger than the island of Manhattan. And we ran that in the Wall Street Journal.
Business executives back east begin to take notice. The new airport is so big it sits in 4 cities: Irving, Grapevine, Coppell, and Euless. It gets its own zip code, and the post office names it a city, DFW Airport, Texas. Here are some other interesting and perhaps little-known facts about the airport. During construction, workers discovered the bones of a 70-million-year-old plesiosaur, which was on display for a number of years in one of the terminals. Minter's Chapel Cemetery, with tombstones dating back to the 1800s, is one of 5 cemeteries on the airport. And 105 natural gas wells on the property generate almost $6 million a year in royalties, money used to pay for capital improvements at the airport. There are not 1, but 2 golf courses on the airport. They're a welcome diversion for passengers spending the night at either one of the airport's 2 hotels. To cut costs, the airport recirculates its gray water to grow the grass and cool its buildings. It goes off the power grid during the day, even in summer. During the night, when electric rates are cheaper, the airport's energy center, that round, white-topped building with adjacent towers, super cools the gray water. It's then pumped into the refrigeration system that cools the buildings during the day. During the summer, that process saves enough electricity to power 18,000 homes. And because blackbirds and silverbirds don't mix well, the airport hires a part-time falconer who uses pet falcons to chase birds away from the airport's 7 runways. And the longest non-stop flight in the world is between Sydney, Australia and DFW. Every flight coming in and out of DFW Airport shows up on a big board in the noise compatibility room. There are 30 microphones scattered around airport property to monitor noise levels.
The noise level here compared to Minneapolis, St. Paul, LAX, or any of the dozens of other airports that have hundreds, if not thousands, of operations a day, the noise anywhere outside this chain link fence is less because there's so much distance between where the aircraft are and where the people begin.
When residents or businesses near the airport complain about loud airplane noise, Harvey Holden starts searching for the source.
Let's say Mr. Jones calls up and says, a flight flew over my house at high noon yesterday, and I want to know why the heck it flew over. And so I'll put a little icon up there that looks like a little house. You'll see a few of them out here. And then I'll draw what looks like a ring from our perspective, but it's actually a cylinder around this place. Goes out half a mile, and it tells me every airplane that flew through there. And this is the list here, yeah. It's 149 flights that turned blue. And they're all listed here, and we can go through all of them.
Holden can pinpoint a specific flight, but just one flight is not enough to warrant government action against excessive airport noise. It takes a pattern of noise over a long period of time. Holden's research over the last 12 years has led to changes in flight patterns for planes arriving and leaving the airport. Instead of being scattered all over the area, they're now funneled into narrow flight corridors. As for Mr. Jones's complaint about that one loud plane, Holden can dig up the data.
So what we do is we take a look at the average noise at that monitor site over the last 10 minutes, 6 weeks, 6 months, or more importantly, yearly. And what that does then is we do a trend analysis. We look at what it was 12 years ago at that monitor, and we look at it what it is now and everything in between, and that shows us inevitably that the overall trend for every one of the monitors is a downward slope.
Quieter jets also contribute to making DFW a quieter airport than what it was 12 years ago when noise monitoring began. The airport has also learned from tragedy how to help others. That's next.